Why is the world clamoring for every time you kind of come up with some findings? Why are you the guy that people are holding their breath to hear what you have to say?
Well, partly I'm the guy because of you. I mean, let's just say that John has been, and his whole team that you've been so important in helping people get ideas out.
Yeah,
And
so you're the 9th most viewed TED Talk. You're right behind Bill Gates, and the trajectory you're on, I suspect in 6 months you'll be top 6, and Brené Brown and Simon Sinek, watch out.
Yeah. Well. But in the meantime, why is this important? So, the fact is that almost everything we know about human life, we know from asking people to remember the past or studying things by taking snapshots. So we could study a group of 20-year-olds and a group of 40-year-olds and a group of 60-year-olds right now. Why not just do that? It's much cheaper than spending 85 years following the same people through their whole lives. But what's unique about what we do is that we prevent false assumptions and false conclusions about life that can be made if you just take snapshots. Actually, Claude Pepper, a congressman from Florida, explained it the best when he quipped, he has this joke. He said, "When I look at South Florida, I would have to believe that you are born Cuban and you die Jewish." That the problem is that if we just take snapshots of life today, we can assume connections across the lifespan that don't turn out to be true. So that's why it's a big deal, and we do it.
So I have a number of questions for you. So to tell the audience, Robert is taking brain scans, blood tests. He's videotaping his cohorts. He's getting hair, heart rate after brain teasers. For years, they were tickling people and taking analysis. I don't know if you're still doing that. DNA, EKG, fMRI, EEG, and do you have some brains?
We do have brains.
Yeah. So you do, every 2 years, you send a lengthy questionnaire. Every 5 years, you collect health records. And every 15 years, you meet people face to face. I consider you the shepherd of life stories, and you're shepherding this group into the 2nd century of this study. And that's so unique on this planet. There haven't, billions of people have lived, but this study is 1 in billions. And I see you as the Green Lantern. So Green Lantern had a ring, and it gave him power, and that you're using this study for good. So let me ask you this: what led you to write the book that you've just recently, that is going to come out in 2023? So you can get the pre-order of the book now. But what do you think are the most misunderstood dimensions around happiness? And this is an emotion that so many people desire, but why are people having a hard time achieving happiness?
Well, I gave that talk in part because it seemed like so many people were sort of susceptible to the cultural trance that we're all in, where we're bombarded with messages all day long that if you buy this thing, you'll be happier, right? If you achieve this thing, you'll be happier. And when we studied all these lives, that wasn't it. When people looked back on their lives, when we asked them what they were proudest of when they were in their 80s, it was never this prize I won or how much money I made. It was about their connections with other people. It was, I raised good kids. I was a good mentor. I was a good friend. And so we want to get that out because it seems as though we sell ourselves a bill of goods all the time about what's going to make us happy.
So in the modern world, do you think we've lost vital relationship skills? What is the crucial skill set set not better taught? And if you were to design a curriculum of happiness, what would you feature?
I would feature investing in relationships. Mm-hmm. The thing that we have lost is the notion that we really need to put effort and constant attention into taking care of the connections that we value and that we have. And so we've started talking about social fitness the way you would talk about physical fitness. You don't go to the gym once and then say, I'm done, I've got that, And what we find is that the people who really actively keep up their relationships are the ones who stay happier and literally stay physically healthier as they get older.
So you've written about this shocking statistic: about 1 in 4 Americans report feeling lonely. That's more than 60 million people, and that in China, loneliness among older adults has markedly increased in recent years. In Great Britain, they've appointed a minister of loneliness to address what has become a major public health challenge. Are these numbers likely to increase as we come out of COVID? And what's behind that information?
They are, the rates of loneliness are increasing. They were increasing over the last 50 years in the United States and across the world. So COVID accelerated loneliness and social isolation, but it didn't begin this decline in social connection. That's been well documented, and it has to do with technology, it has to do with family disconnection and social mobility and all kinds of factors. So the path of least resistance, unfortunately, is to get more isolated and to stay on our screens. So that's what we're invested in speaking to.
What do you think of the whole happiness field that is emerging? Will it raise the level of happiness on the planet, and if so, how?
Yes, I think it can if people actually take some of these practices to heart. Because we do know there is good science behind what helps people thrive. And so people know that if they, first of all, if they take care of their physical health, if they take care of their relationships, if they stop pursuing a lot of the false shiny objects that don't really make us happy, that those things are doable, and in the process, people generally are more content. Not happy every day, because nobody's happy every day, but generally more content with their lives.
So this is a 1940 Princeton yearbook. This is a 1938 MIT yearbook. Wow. I didn't bring the Harvard one because that's the group that you've been, part of your original group you were studying. And then you studied another group that lived in the West End. I know Leonard Nimoy grew up in the West End. How is the demographics, or how has your study changed since the early days of following these people from that era?
Well, in the most basic ways, it hasn't changed. Yeah. We studied the same big questions about physical health, mental health, work relationships, romantic relationships, friendships. So we study the same big domains of life, but what we've done now is to study them with new methods. So, you know, in 1938, we didn't even know what DNA was. And we've been measuring DNA, and not only DNA, but epigenetics, what turns genes on and off. We've collected brains, and we're doing analyses of brain tissue after people have passed away. And so we're like a study in the history of science, because we've changed our methods, but the questions we pursue are the same questions we were studying in 1938.
So where do you think we should go on the planet to see the happiest people? What allows them to be happy? And do you believe that the younger generation is less happy, or is that just a myth?
Dan Buettner, who studies the blue zones, he looked at the places where people lived the longest and were most content. And you can see villages, there are communities in Greece, in Japan, in various places, and you can go there, as he's done, and find out how those communities work and what people eat and how much they walk every day. So that's doable, but there's a lot of information now about this. And so you don't have to visit all these places to find out what's known in the scientific world about how to stay happy.
So in your book, you talk a lot about learning to listen to your friends. So for people who are attention deficit or brought up on these smart devices and are very distracted, are they at a disadvantage in terms of listening to friends, and will that make it harder for them to kind of live a fulfilled life?
You can teach yourself to be a better listener, and you can teach yourself to be more curious about other people. That's a skill. Those are both skills that people can learn, even if you have attention deficit problems, right? But it means making the effort and also seeing the results. Some people talk only about themselves, and what you see is that there's essentially less connection with the people you're with than if you are genuinely curious and listen well as people tell you about themselves.
Yeah. So you think we should have social fitness in addition to physical fitness in grade school? As people are living longer into 80s, centenarians, maybe 120, someone in this room could live to 150. Do you think there's going to be doubling down on relationships at later stages in life? And what are some things you predict that people are going to be bringing into the next chapters of their lives in terms of relationships?
Well, hopefully, we will figure out better ways to help people as they get older stay part of the communities and stay active. Because one of the things we know for all of us is that we want to feel like we matter. And the thing that is more difficult for people as they get older, and so as we live longer, is that as we get older, how do we still feel like we matter in the world? It used to be that older people were absolutely essential to taking care of grandchildren, to doing other things. And now we have divided up ourselves in such ways that many older people don't have those roles anymore. So the question is, how can we re-engineer our social systems so that we use the wisdom and the energy and the time that older people have? I'm not sure that directly answers your whole question, but...
Yep. So people have been listening to your talk that you did in 2013, this new book. What's new in it that they can kind of go back to the well and learn and help navigate life?
Well, the book is about all the ways that relationships play a role in our physical health and in our emotional well-being. And so we look at the science of it, the biological aspects of how relationships change our bodies, and we look at relationships at work, relationships at home, what we call casual ties. The person who checks you out at the grocery store turns out to be a person who's valuable to you and you to that person in many ways. So what we do is we take you through all the different types of relationships that happen naturally in our lives and help people think about, well, how could I enhance those? And how could I be a better partner in all these different kinds of relationships?
Great. Last question. Kind of like Madonna, you're recognized in public now that you have such a high-profile talk. Any interesting stories from having given one of the top 10 most popular talks, TED Talks?
My 19-year-old cousin in Florida called me up one day and said, "We were assigned to watch your TED Talk in my freshman class." And he thought that was just the coolest thing in the world. That was,
Thank you, Robert. Ladies and gentlemen, Robert Waldinger.